what comes to my mind is that having worked in the last couple of years, rather much larger organizations, the more I read that those ideas have been around for a long, long time. I've rarely seen them anywhere implemented like that. Why is there seemingly potentially a threshold where at some point that narrative stops and suddenly gets either pushed out of an organization upon a certain size, or it doesn't get through, only it's being paying lip service to, and seems to be really, really hard to at least be implemented. I mean, whenever I ever talk to a C-level person, they seem to still sort of get it, but they seem to at best struggle to ever implement this, to go people first and to make sure this really in place, actually working. There's enough case studies to show that that brings amazing value out of people, because people are going to be happier at work, they're going to be healthier at work, they're going to feel a purpose, they're going to feel safe, they're going to feel trusted. Have you ever seen where this sort of starts to really trip over, or why, any reasons why this suddenly has such a hard time to get into bigger organizations? Maybe it's the question.
Because we haven't shut down all the business schools in the world. We close their doors tomorrow morning, the world will be a better place, and we can come back to that. This Henry Mintzberg is a Canadian researcher. You guys probably know him, but Henry, I'm skipping answering your question, and I'll come back to it in a minute. Henry, one of Henry's many pieces of research, looked at graduates with professional degrees like engineering and business versus liberal arts graduates. And what he discovered, which is in retrospect, like most things like that, not surprising, at least the first half, is engineering and MBA grads got something like twice as many job offers, and the average starting salary was 50% higher than that for the liberal arts people. But then the fascinating thing that kicked in at year 20, the liberal arts people had dramatically surpassed the professional school people, and literally rank, salary, or at least on those kinds, those kinds of numbers. But let's go back to your initial question. It's obviously lunacy to blame it on one person, and so this is a lunatic answer in part, and that is Milton Friedman, 1970, maximize shareholder value. And he basically said anything that smacks, and he used the freaking term of business is not in the business of social responsibility. It is there to make money for shareholders. But here are the hard numbers. In 1970, and these are American firms to be sure, in 1970, 50% of earnings went to shareholders, etc., and 50% of earnings went to employees, research and development, and so on. It is now 50 years later. Hard-nosed research that was done in about 2017 or something like that said we have now reached a point 50-50, remember? 50 for the shareholders, basically 50 for employees. That's not accurate, but it's a decent approximation. It is now 91% for shareholders, 9% for employees. And, the games that you have to play are games like, stock repurchases and all kinds of crap like that. So I won't blame it entirely on Friedman. There was also Michael Jensen at the Harvard Business School, who usually gets the same credit, as Friedman. But there was a dramatic change, at least among the big companies. Some of it, and obviously we could talk for 2 days, which I would rather do rather than a short period of time. There was a book, the name of which I don't remember, which I quoted recently. And the guy who wrote the book, who is a consultant, was sitting with a CEO, and they were going through the public-ish annual review and so on, and all kinds of good stuff had happened, and all kinds of wonderful reasons for that. They had taken care of employees, blah, 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 blah. And so our friend who wrote the book turned to the CEO and said, "Why do you think other CEOs don't do this?" And the CEO said, "I don't know, but I think they're kind of embarrassed. They think they should be looking at shareholder or at spreadsheets. But the other two things went through my mind. First of all was shareholder value, and the second one was that in search of excellence has, in retrospect, a day when everything changed, and it's a direct response to your question. And that day was when my co-author, Bob Waterman, and I, who were in the McKinsey San Francisco office, drove 30 miles down the road to Palo Alto, which is not the Palo Alto of today, and had a meeting with the president of the Hewlett-Packard Company. And on that day, I was introduced to the HP way, and in particular, I was introduced to MBWA, which is managing by wandering around. And managing by wandering around, to me, is the answer. I treat it as a metaphor, not something literal, and that's particularly true now with the work from home. But managing by wandering around means being in touch with the people who do the work. And, this doesn't sound believable, but I'm willing to put my, hand on a Bible. We're wandering around with John Young, the president of HP, and there's a computer terminal, big old computer terminal on a desk somewhere, and this old guy is talking to this young kid who's 26 or 27, and John said, "Hey," he said, "come on over here. I want you to meet Bill Hewlett." And Bill Hewlett then, I don't know, he's probably in his 60s, and Bill was having just a chat with this kid, and they were just chatting with each other about the things the kid was working on and so on. But that's it was a miracle moment, and it's what I've been looking for ever since. But I had this other, I hate words like epiphany, but my wife and I spend, not this year because of the problems, my wife and I spend a couple of months each North American winter in New Zealand. And we have a little, what's called a batch, short for bachelor, a little cabin on the Tasman Sea. And we have the most gorgeous beach in the world in front of us. And this was 2 years ago, and I was 75, and it's really embarrassing to be 75 and still thinking about management theory. But I was out on the beach, and I was thinking about, that's pathetic, most beautiful beach in the world. I'm on the beach, age 75, thinking about MBWA. But it's really embarrassing. But I had an epiphany, and I'm willing to call it an epiphany in this instance. And my epiphany was, why do you do MBWA? Do you do it to learn about what's going on at the front line? Sure. But you do MBWA for one reason, and that reason is because it's fun. Mm-hmm. It is a kick to be in the distribution center at 2 a.m. in the morning with the people who are slaving away and chatting with them about whatever else there is. And then my hard-nosed answer was, and if you are doing MBWA and it is not fun, return to your desk, find a piece of paper, find a pen, and put your resignation letter together. And I really do. Somebody you may have run into, and as usual, I don't remember his name. There aren't as many books on hiring as there ought to be, and my bias is you should never hire anyone. And there are other measures, and I don't like the quant measure, but the EQ, the emotional quotient. Never hire anyone for any job who doesn't have a high EQ. The worst thing you can say academically is there are two kinds of people in the world. But there are two kinds of people in the world. There are people who give a shit about people, and there are people who don't really care all that much about people. One of my favorite quotes in my most recent book was from a guy, Peter Miller, I think is his name, and he heads a middle-size biotech startup. And his wonderful one-liner, which to me was delivered directly from God through the heavens, was, "We only hire nice people." And he said, I'm in an incredibly complex business, and in order to be in some jobs, you have got to have some kind of a microbiology degree, and I know you two guys are smarter than any other human beings on earth, but where you and I don't even understand what the degree name is. But he said, let's take that degree, and it's, microbiology, neuromicrobiology. He said, guess what? There are actually in the world a lot of people who have those degrees. Don't hire the jerks. And it's not a matter of, frontline employees who are flight attendants at airlines. It is a matter of jobs where there are PhD science degree requirements. Hire the good ones, hire the nice ones. And he does, his is really hard nosed. You're the CEO. I'm telling you about my academic experience. You want to weep. It is so good. And your hand is itching to hire me. But I, the CEO, cannot hire you, because after you have interviewed with me, you must, and he used the term, not me, you must run the gauntlet. And running the gauntlet is about 15 interviews. And a couple of them may be with scientists, others will be with the receptionist, they'll be with a 28-year-old in the finance department. And any of those 20 people or 10 people who you have to interview with has veto rights. They can say, nope, not a good fit. And, take your 11 years spent getting your PhD and sell it to somebody else. There was also, I'm really irritated that it didn't come out in time for my last book. There was a incredible, I am occasionally accused of using hyperbole, but this is not hyperbole. There is an incredible study that Google did, and it was a study of their best employees and their most innovative teams. And it is said by the person who reported it, there was shock and amazement in the executive areas. The best Google employees had 8 traits, and 7 of those traits were soft skills, like listening, cooperating, appreciating other people's points of view. And then the STEM stuff, the science, technology, engineering, and math, came in at the bottom. Then they did the most innovative teams, and the same damn thing happened. And you know what they discovered with the teams that weren't so good, that didn't have the people skills? There was intellectual bullying, which really rang a bell with me. It is some damn Stanford 23-year-old who has an IQ of 750 and knows that God endowed him with greater intelligence than any living human being on earth. And he is going to let you know about that. And, Google did something which I think is absolutely appalling, disgusting, and stupid. And that is, they classify people as A players and B players, which is a perfect way to demotivate 50% of the people in the organization.
Yeah.
But, at any rate, it was the MBA. I don't know why people, well, I do know. We promote the wrong people. We promote the people who have the technical skills. Let's talk for the next 3 hours, except it'll really be a dull tape because I will be weeping.